All right, so we're on the notes now, we're talking about the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula is a tried and true way. It's the fourth way, but it's a tried and true method which will allow you to find the x values or the answer to any quadratic equation, whether it's decimals, whether it's factorable or not. And so this is probably going to be the go-to method, especially if you're not comfortable with factoring. If factoring hasn't worked for you, this is what you want to go to. All right, so we need to first get our trinomial into this form. So we need to get it to look like ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Once we have it into this form, we need to identify our a value, our b value, and our c value. Those are just the coefficients that are in front of the variable and hanging out here at the end. This is the quadratic equation. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. All right? Now, that looks pretty complicated. I mean, when you look at it at first, it's like, wow, there's a lot of stuff going on. I see a b, I see an a, and a c. So all three of our coefficients are represented in there. I also see a square root. I see a plus and a minus, which means we're going to end up with two answers. This is there just because the square root will give you a plus, a positive, and a negative answer. All right, so this equation is essentially this equation, this trinomial, solved for x. All you need to do then is plug in the correct a, b, and c values, and you're done. If you can plug a number in and type it in your calculator correctly, you will get the right answer. And that's what we're going to work on today. All right, now let's take a look at an example. Example A on the sheet is 2x squared minus 16x plus 27 equals 0. What we're going to do now is plug in the correct a, b, and c values into our quadratic formula. First, let's identify what a is, what b is, and what c is. It's in the correct form already. We don't have to do any manipulating. A is 2, b is negative 16, and c is 27. So once we've identified those variables, we're just going to put them in the correct spot. Into our quadratic equation. All right, now be careful on this. When we have negative signs, we have to make sure that we're accounting for those, because one incorrect negative sign will mess you all up. So here we have negative 16. We have to put it in there in the correct spot for b. We're taking the negative of b, which means the negative of negative 16. What should we put here? Positive 16. Okay, so you're doing negative of negative 16, which is positive 16. All right, plus or minus square root. We need to do a b squared. What's b? Negative 16. I suggest putting that in parentheses because it's not negative 16 squared. It's negative 16 squared. Okay? So it's negative 16 times negative 16. It's not 16 squared and then put a negative sign on there. In other words, your answer here will always be positive. All right? If you have a positive number for b, it'll give you a positive answer. If you have a negative number for b, it'll give you a positive answer in there. Minus 4, that's always a 4. It never changes. What should we put in there for a? Okay, what should we put in there for c? Divide. This is example A. Divide by 2 times what? 2. Okay. All right. Now, all of this stuff equals x. Let your calculator do the work from this point on. Everybody's got their calculator. Turn it on. I'm going to switch over to the Elmo. I think what you'll find is that this is a lot easier once you learn how to type it in there correctly. Now, let's look at the equation one more time. When I go to type this in, I don't want to type everything in all at once right now. You're not at the level where you understand what the calculator is going to do with that information. Because if you want to type it all in at one time, you've got to put parentheses in the correct spot. See, the calculator understands order of operations. It understands it needs to do multiplication and division first, then addition and subtraction later. But sometimes we want to do the addition and subtraction first and multiply later. So you got to put parentheses in the correct spot. So what I would suggest you do is let's just do this stuff underneath the parentheses first. How do I do that? This stuff right here, not in the parentheses, under the square root, let's do that first. So in your calculator, type in there negative 16, oops, squared minus 4 times 2 times 27. Okay, calculator understands order of operations. What it's going to do first is it's going to do your negative 16 times negative 16. So it'll take care of that. Then it'll come over here and do 4 times 2 times 27. Once it has those two answers, then it'll subtract these two parts. That's the correct order of operations. That's how we want the calculator to do that operation. So hit enter. 40. Okay, that part's good. Now, what do we need to do to that number? Everything in the green circle is 40. What do we need to do to that 40, Jameson? Square root that 40. All right. So what I do next is I hit the square root button. Now watch how I do this. Second square root, second, and then hit the negative button, which is going to come back as a answer. Okay? So I want to square root my previous answer. My previous answer was 40. I square root that answer, and it gives me that there. Huh? I don't square root a negative. Right, I hit the negative button, which if I hit the second function key, the yellow button, and then negative, it's really answer. So I'm basically pulling in that previous answer. Okay, so I'm going to write this down because I want to show my teacher my work of what I just did. So that should come out, what was that number, 6.32? Okay, and I know 2 times 2 is 4. So I'm going to show that step right there. Everything that's in this square root was simplified to 6.63. Everybody good so far? Everybody good? All right. Now, this means x could equal 16 plus 6.3 over 4, and x could equal 16 minus 6.3 over 4. I've really got two problems going on here. So I'm just going to split this up into my two problems. 16 plus 6.3 over 4 and 16 minus 6.3 over 4. Okay, now some of you will just do this in your calculator and then write the answer. 16 plus 6.3 over 4 equals 5.575, which is 5.6. Okay, x equals 5.6. And then x also equals 2.4. All right, so those are our two answers. Now, did we have to factor? No. Did we have to remember much of anything in terms of procedure? Not really. All we had to do is know this equation and plug those numbers in correctly. This process takes the least amount of thinking, but you have to be careful about this because you have to be careful how you plug the numbers in. So your two answers are 5.6 and 2.4. All right. let's take any questions on that. Let's do another one. I'm going to go a little bit faster. Let's look at B. 3x squared minus 12x equals negative 12. Is it in the correct form right now? Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Now, to get it in the right form, I need to bring the 12 over. So I add 12 to both sides. All right. Identify A, B, and C. So normally I'll just put boxes around them and then label them A, B, and C. That way there's no confusion. Write out some examples. All right, now I'm going to write out my formula. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Now I'll plug in the numbers. What should go in for negative b? Positive 12, because it's the negative of negative 12. And we know negative times negative is a positive. What should we put in for b squared? Okay, negative 12 in parentheses, squared. So that's negative 12 times negative 12. Minus 4, a is 3, and b is 12. Divided by 2 times a, and a is 3. All right, so all this equals x. So we're just going to put that into our calculator, type it in there, and see if you get the right answer. Now, let's try this time. Try doing the square root with everything in the underneath the square root all at once. Try doing the square root with everything underneath all at once. You should get an answer of 0. Get an answer of 0. Did you put parentheses around the negative 12? All right. Yeah. Yeah. This negative 12 squared, right here, is it? Positive 12. Yeah, it's 4ac. All right. What? For b, we added 12 to both sides, so we have positive 12 for c, right? Here's c, positive 12. What? No, you got to get c on the left for these. It's got to look like this. All right. Now, let's do this part in our head. Let's forget the calculator. What's negative 12 times negative 12? Positive 144. This piece should be 144. What's 12 times 3? Well, what's 4 times 3? 12. And what's 12 times 12? 12 plus 12 is 124, but 12 times 12 is 144. Okay, so that's 144 minus 144, 0. The square root of 0 is 0. All right, so everything underneath the square root should be 0. So I have 12 plus and minus 0 over 6. So that'll give me 12 plus 0 over 6 and 12 minus 0 over 6. Isn't that the same thing? Whether I add 0 or take away 0, not changing anything. So this is the same as just 12 over 6, which is 2. There's only one answer, 2. Could we end up with a no solution some of the time? If this amount underneath the square root was negative, then you can't take the square root of a negative, and we'd end up with no solution. For example, if we had a bigger a or c value, if a was a little bit bigger, like if a was 4, or if b was a little bit bigger, if that was a 13, then we would have no solution on this one. Okay? But in this case, we have one solution. What do you think that tells you about the graph? If it only crosses the x-axis in one spot, what spot could that be? It's got to be the vertex. So that's the x-coordinate of the vertex. Okay. Let's look at the third one, and then we'll call it a day for me, and then it's your turn. Yes, we have homework. You had a day off yesterday. All right, 3x squared minus x equals 2. Yeah, I don't know why they put a plus in there. I think it was going to be a negative, and then we typed a plus. But all right, so let's identify our A, B, and C coefficients. Here's A. There's B. There's C. You try putting it on paper. You try typing it in. I'm going to come around and see if you know what you're doing. This is the last one for today, and then you guys can do some homework.